Now, I would love to introduce our panelists and get right into the conversation. We're going to be talking about combating COVID related racism towards the Asian American communities. And so, to lead the talk, we have Representative Judy Chu. She's the United States Representative for the state of California. Judy Chu was elected to the U.S. House of Representatives in July 2009. She represents the 27th Congressional District, which includes Pasadena, the West San Gabriel Valley of Southern California. Rep- Representative Chu currently serves on the powerful House Ways and Means Committee, which has jurisdiction over legislation pertaining to taxes, revenue, Social Security, and Medicare. And then we also have with us Lizelle Tanglau, Senior Editor for Membership and Innovation of HuffPost. Lizelle is a data-driven bridge journalist, consultant, and entrepreneur at the intersection of editorial, product, audience development, business development, marketing, and sales. She currently runs membership and innovation at HuffPost. Previously, she worked at CNN Money, CBSNews.com, Vice News, Now This, ABCNews.com, KCBS, KCAL, and the Press Enterprise newspaper in Southern California. So it seems that we may have lost. Oh, there we go. And so without further ado, I am going to hand it over and stop talking. So thank you so much. And I am so excited for this conversation. And we may be having a little bit of technical difficulties. You know, technology, sometimes our friends, and mostly our friends, sometimes our enemies. So I think we may be just having a little bit of technical difficulty, but in any case, I can jump in the
Representative Chu, would you like to kick us off?
Sure.
So you're in.
Well, it is great to be here, and thank you for bringing up this very important topic of how the Asian American community has been treated in this time of the coronavirus. This is something that I think Americans have some inkling of, but they do not know the extent of the anti-Asian coronavirus hate incidents and crimes. And so it is important for us to have this discussion, and I thank you for including it in the Power to Fly Diversity Reboot virtual conference.
Perfect. And in the meantime, while it seems that there's a little bit of technical difficulties, I want to thank you for talking about this topic, because I think if we're going to talk about the economy and, regrowing the workforce, this is something we definitely need to discuss. Going into the pandemic, we saw a lot of the issues that the Asian American community was facing in the United States. So I really thank you for talking about this. And, just to jump into some of the topics that we have chosen. Oh, there we go. Perfect. So I will stop and hand it over. Thank you. Okay. Sorry about that. I thought that was working, but it seems like it's up, but it's okay. We're all prepared for this. So, I really want to start in talking about the Asian American community and, specifically talking about President Trump and his repeated use of the phrase Chinese virus. And so I want to, discuss how that has impacted the incidence of discrimination against the Asian American community.
So let me say that the pandemic has created so much fear and anxiety across so many people in the United States. And so we have people that are now feeling uncertain, who don't know where to go and what the future holds. And what we need is leadership that would bring us together and have us help one another. Instead, the opposite has happened. And as a result, it was back in January when Asian Americans started to notice that they were the object of anti-Asian coronavirus hate incidents. In fact, it started with incidents. It started with dirty looks and harsh words, and also rumors, even flyers that were passed out saying to avoid particular Asian American businesses because they would contain the coronavirus. But then, as we got into February and March, it escalated. And as a result, we've seen very ugly hate crimes and incidents occurring all across this country. In New York, there was a woman, Asian American woman, who was simply taking out her garbage when someone threw acid on her, and it caused chemical burns to her face and her arms. And there was a Filipino nurse, can you believe this, on the front lines of fighting the pandemic, who was then assaulted by people who were saying that he was the cause of the pandemic. In Texas, there was a family of 3 at the Sam's Club when a man went and stabbed them, and 2 of them were children ages 2 and 6. And he did that because he said that he wanted to kill Asian Americans. In San Francisco, there was an elderly man who was simply collecting cans when a group of people started taunting him and then physically assaulting him, saying that they hated Asian Americans. And in Los Angeles, there was a 16-year-old boy who was actually put into the hospital because of bullies who said that he had coronavirus because he was Asian American. Because of all these anti-Asian hate crimes and incidents, Asian American advocates have gotten together and they put together these reporting sites. The most extensive one is Stop AAPI Hate, and you can tune into that on the web, and you can report any of these hate crimes and incidents. And it was really important to do that so that we know what's really going on with these hate crimes and incidents, but also so that the person who's the victim of such hate can make sure that they are not isolated. Because one of the worst enemies for anyone that's a victim of a crime is isolation. This particular site is very important. You can report in different languages, and also you can get help in being able to deal with these hate incidents and crimes, because some of these are incidents, some of these are people yelling out bad things. Others get to the seriousness of crimes, and if so, then you need concrete help on that. And let me just say this too, which is that no hate incident or crime is small enough to not report. In other words, some people say, oh, well, they just leaned out of a car and yelled some terrible name against me and saying, you should be quarantined. That's something to report. That is something that is important for us to know about. And as a matter of fact, because so many people have reported, right now we have over 2,000 anti-Asian hate crimes and incidents that have been reported. It's probably an under-reporting. Nonetheless, it gives us some idea what's going on. And at its height, there were at least 100 incidents being reported per day.
Wow. I mean, the incidents that you're discussing and the numbers are incredible. And, this is so important to report. So thank you for sharing that source. And I dropped it in the chat so that everyone who's listening could access that. Because, we have to get to the source if we want to stop and control these incidents. So thank you so much for sharing that. And thank you so much for discussing this and, highlighting how important it is to tackle this subject. And, couldn't agree with you more that it's more important than ever to have a leader who doesn't name certain things by a group of people, right? I couldn't agree with you more, obviously. So thank you so much. And so, I wanted to jump in and talk about the tension between different communities of color and the drive towards importance of unifying around the common goal of anti-racism to achieve a more equitable world.
So, our country has not dealt with racism very well. It's not for lack of trying. There are many of us that want to bring out these issues and resolve them. But it is so shocking that we still have Confederate flags that are being flown here in this country, that they're Confederate statues. In fact, they are right there in the US Capitol. There's at least 10 of them that we have been trying to get rid of since forever, because those are symbols of racism. And the fact that they are still there says something about our country. In Germany, you don't see statues that or plaques that are still there reminding people that Hitler was a great guy. They have removed all of those so that they can deal with their past. That's not the case in this country. So after decades of this, you can imagine that racism can rear its ugly head at any point in time. Now, we're seeing that with the Asian American Pacific Islander community right now, because of coronavirus and because of this president's use of the term Chinese virus. And we are seeing it because we saw the shocking, brutal murder of George Floyd. I mean, our life has changed tremendously because now we actually see the videos. And with his situation, his murder, it was so shocking to see this police officer putting his knee on George Floyd's neck so nonchalantly, putting his pocket in his hand in his pocket, not even caring that people were actually taking a video of him, because he thought he could get away with it. And so he just did it for 8 minutes and 46 seconds, thinking that nothing could happen to him. And then there were 3 officers that aided and abetted because they didn't do anything to truly interfere with this, despite the pleas of bystanders. Now, I have to tell you something about different communities coming together, because in this case, that one of those officers was Asian American. And initially, there were bad feelings in those days following the murder of George Floyd. There were some tensions there in Minnesota between the Black and the Asian community. And that's why I felt it was really important for us to come together. In fact, I immediately organized a press conference of our Tri-Caucus plus Native American Caucus to say that we stand united in denouncing the murder of George Floyd. This should not happen to anybody in America, but it especially should not happen to African Americans who have been the victim of police violence all these years, all these decades, and nothing has been done about it. And we also did another press conference that week of Asian American national and local organizations to say that the Asian American community stand with the Black community in denouncing what happened to George Floyd and in doing something about it. And so there were 200 AAPI organizations that issued their own statements condemning this and urging for action to stop this from occurring any further. It was very powerful. And I think that it is so important at this point in time for us to be standing together to stop this terrible police brutality, which is taking away so many lives.
I couldn't agree with you more. I think it's almost it's incredible to see, the movements that have come behind this, and it's like looking at it only because these are being publicized, right? Like thanks to social media and the way things are able to spread now, are we able to see these changes? Because how much of this has happened without us being aware of it? Rough rides and everything else that goes into police brutality and abuse of power, especially in regards to the Black community. So I couldn't agree with you more, and I think it's so important to bring that up. And so I wanted to ask you, in having all of these groups come together and denounce racism and police brutality, how can other minority groups support the Black community at this time? And how can they come together, to take actionable steps to impact change?
Well, I have been so heartened to see the diversity of people who are marching in the streets. It is not only African Americans, but people of all ethnic races who have come out there, and they're doing it day after day to say that this is not acceptable and that we have to end this. I think that is just incredible. And it is the dedication of these people who are marching day after day that is causing change. Now, let me say that we in Congress have had bills to stop police brutality for a long time, but we feel that this is finally the time when we can get this passed. And that's why we introduced a bill, the Justice in Policing Act, just last week. And this has the combination of all the bills that we passed in the past in one bill, which would ban chokeholds, which would ban no-knock invasions of a house for drug crimes, which would create a registry of police that have conducted misconduct so that they can't just go from one police department to the next and do the same thing. It would hold police accountable in the courts by removing barriers to prosecute police misconduct. It reforms something called qualified immunity so that individuals who are victims of police misconduct are not barred from recovering damages. It would also be able to ban the transfer of military equipment to state and local law enforcement. Believe it or not, you can get tanks and grenade launchers that just come straight from the military to these cities, and then it's used to quell any kind of protests in these particular cities. And that's not right. It also grants the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division subpoena power to improve patterns and practice investigations of police misconduct in various cities. So this is very important. The Democrats feel so strongly about it. Immediately upon its introduction, there were over 200 members of Congress that co-sponsored it. And it's very important for us to pass this. We need, however, the Republicans to agree, because of course, Republicans are the ones that control the Senate. We can indeed pass the Justice in Policing Act out of the House, but we need for the Senate to pass a similar thing out. And that's where the pressure really needs to be. Thank goodness we already have a bill that has been introduced by Senators Cory Booker and Kamala Harris that is similar to our bill. But the thing is, Senator Mitch McConnell has to allow that bill to be heard so that action can be taken.
Just as you're speaking of all of the things of it that it covers, it's almost baffling that this certain amount of force is allowed to be used against everyday citizens, and that we've seen utilized against the Black community and against other minority communities, but definitely with a focus on the Black community. So it's baffling. And, I know I'm personally very thankful to the Democratic Party for bringing these up and trying to combat these issues, because it starts with legislation, and then it starts with a change from there. So you have to get it in place and have those rules in place to then elaborate on that change. And so we have a question coming in the chat, and I think it's a really interesting question. And this is coming from Lucic, who asks, what do you think is the role of Asian diversity, equity, and inclusion advocates or consultants to do now, considering Asians want to support with Black Lives Matter, but due to a high level of racism, need to do self-care?
Well, I think it's important for AAPIs to be as active as ever. This is a time to raise your voices on both issues. We know that this cannot be a just society until there's justice and equality for all. And that means uniting behind our different issues. Now, let me say that when we were raising this whole issue of anti-Asian coronavirus, hate crimes and incidents, I actually asked for the support of the Tri-Caucus plus Native American Caucus in denouncing it. And I was immediately gratified because they came out strongly. We did a press conference together, and they said to all of America, knock it off. And in every instance, they have supported us, plus our Democratic leadership, like Nancy Pelosi, have been very vocal in saying, stop this. So we need to send that message out there to all the public to say that that it is not right to target Asian Americans for what's going on with coronavirus, and also to not use the term Chinese virus, which is being used it's a term used by President Trump for his own political purposes, so that he can blame China instead of having the attention drawn to his own inefficiencies and complete abdication, actually, of responsibility for coronavirus. And so we need to make sure we speak out on anti-Asian hate crimes and incidents. At the same time, it's so important for us to speak out against police brutality, because these kinds of instances of brutality is something that can happen to people of any race. Right now, it is happening to a huge degree to African Americans, but it is important for every American to stop this, because if you let the police get away with this, if there are no restrictions, if there's no consequence for doing this, anybody can be the victim of police brutality. Look at that 75-year-old who was at one protest and then was pushed back so that his head got smashed on the pavement. I mean, who knows who might be the next victim? And so we all stand together, and we all stand together in making sure that we have a police force that is actually paying attention to the community, and that is working with the community and not against the community. And by the way, of course, I talked about our national efforts in Congress, but really the change comes on the local level. It comes with the pressure on each city council, on every board of supervisors, to change their practices, to ban those chokeholds, to ban the no-knock warrants, and to make sure that there is a way to deal with police misconduct. So we need to stand together on all of these issues.
I could not agree with everything you're saying more. I think in social injustices, intersectionality is a huge point, and injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And so it is more important than ever to have the intersectionality and stand unified together. So I really want to thank you for bringing up that point, and also talking about community policing. I think that is a beautiful direction for a lot of these police departments to move into, and have a friendlier approach, and more of that community and unifying approach when working with their communities. And so I want to thank you so much for your time today. And I apologize about the technical difficulties, but that's what we got to love about technology, right? Learning how to maneuver it one day at a time. So thank you so much, Representative Judy Chu. I really appreciated this conversation. And so for everyone on this chat, thank you so much for joining today. Thank you for your comments and the questions that came in. If you're looking to earn SHRM credits for today's talk, just use the code on the screen to redeem those credits, and that'll come up shortly. And then we are shortly going to bring in our next speaker. So thank you so much.
Thank you.